Alright, welcome back again. This is the Table of Brotherhood, and we have the brothers.
Brother James.
Brother Willis.
Brother Calpine.
Brother Ade.
And I'm Brother Alex. We're coming to you, going to talk about a different topic today. The topic we're going to talk about is black men in education. Alright, we all have heard the rumors and the, what's the other word?
Speculations.
The speculations and the hearsay saying that, not enough black men go to college, not enough, we have more black men in prison as opposed to college. And some of those really aren't true, but we're going to go and talk about it actually now. We're just going to start now. The focus questions first is, what is education? 2, college, is it for everyone? 3, what are some misconceptions about getting into and going to college? And last, are college universities the only way that brothers can further their education? So first up is, what is education? So, actually I'm going to start with you.
Yes.
Yes, I'm going to start with you. Because you already know where I'm coming from when I came up with that question.
Education to me is anything that brings an increase in knowledge. Yeah, leave it there for right now.
Alright, we want to go into it?
Let's see. I guess, it really is just an increase in knowledge. So, it can be done in many ways. It can be done, it could be a personal increase in knowledge. It could be an increase in knowledge for gaining mastery of new skills. But really, when it boils down to it, that's basically what it is, it's an increase in knowledge.
Okay, alright. What say you?
No, I would totally agree. At the base level, that's all it is that you are gaining knowledge that you didn't have previous to that point.
Okay.
Now, what you do with it or how you get it or what you do with it is a separate question.
True enough, true enough. I've always defined, especially after the Let's Make Man conference that I went to a couple of years ago, I started defining education as being information that you utilize to get your career going. That's the way I would define education as far as like school education. You have basically education you guys are talking about when you just amass knowledge. Anything when you learn something that you didn't know, that's pretty much your education. My thing is, it's education if you can utilize it. It's information if you can't. That's the difference to me. All of it is information. If you can utilize it and actually apply it to your real life, then that is education to me.
Right, and to jump in with you on that, my philosophy of education is it's the application of academia to your real life experiences. We all understand that there are different forms of education. There's street knowledge, there's common sense, and also, there's instructional knowledge. But for the most part, you have to get to a point where you can intertwine all three of them in order to make good decisions. So when you look at education, it's more than just someone imparting the information to you, but it's internalizing the information and then being able to regurgitate it in your actions every day. And I think that's the difference between someone who we would deem educated and someone who's just gone to school or someone who just learned a different trade or a different skill. It's that actual demonstration of it. So that's my spiel of education.
It's completely true.
Okay.
But the issue is, why is it true? And I think it's just because many of us in our community don't put a certain level of importance on education. We don't hold it in high regard like we used to do. In the earlier days, in the 40s, 50s, even before that, education was the #1 thing that our community strived for. It is not #1 now. And why that is, I'm not sure. But that is a fact. There shouldn't be any disputing that.
Oh no, true,
Just
true,
in general.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons why it's the case. There's some systemic reasons why it's the case. So a lot of people get records before they're 18 and now they're not eligible for federal funds. So they can't get scholarships. You have a lot of that going on now. You we had a broken trust that happened where people were getting educated in the 70s and 80s and not going back to the community. And so what started happening is people saw the people who were in the communities that were taking care of them, taking care of the community, not those people who were going to school. Right. It was the people in the community that, maybe had learned a trade or something like that. And so our heroes and role models became different than the people who actually went to school, because those people left our communities. Mm-hmm. And so now, the people that we see with money and education, or money, don't necessarily have education, formal education. So, you look at people we look up to, LeBron James and Kobe Bryant, they went straight from high school, to NBA. Mm-hmm. They didn't go to school. And so that's a lot of people look up to them and say that those are their heroes, whereas those doctors and lawyers, they're nowhere to be seen in our communities. They moved out to Gwinnett County, to Buckhead, and so I think there's a lot of reasons why a black male would say, well, if I want to have power, or if I want to take care of my family and my community, there's some other ways that I can do that besides going to school.
Just to chime in on that, well, first of all, just from my own personal experience, college can be quite overwhelming. And I think at the very, very, very base level of it, when you look at the cost to attend college scares a lot of young black men. You think about, Morehouse, the #1 institution for black men for so many years. When someone tells you, well, it's $25,000, $26,000, $27,000 a year to go, and your parents only make $18,000. I mean, you multiply that times 4, you're almost talking about $100,000 for what a lot of people in our community just considers a piece of paper. I mean, a degree is only a piece of paper with your name on it. It's a bad misconception, because you can have a diploma that has your name on it, but a degree opens up many more doors. In addition to that, we have to look at the simple fact that when we look at our community, we have to look at everybody on an individual basis. And I myself, while I was in college, I even complained to my mom. I said, it's a shame that I'm seeing people out here with Cadillac Escalades on 32s, and people got J's, all types of collections of shoes, and these people aren't going to school. These people have their hand on more actual cash than I do, and I'm trying to obtain a degree. And so when you look at what can I have now versus what I'm going to be exposed to 4 or 5 years from now, it's hard to get young people to recognize that or understand that, especially like Brother James said, if there's no importance being put on it at home, then of course, I can just go work a regular job and live a grown person's life. What do I really need a degree for? I'm not going to shell out money, and then I might not even finish anyway. So a lot of times people don't even want to start.
I mean, I think that it has a lot to do with what you said, for example, has to do with a lack of importance, but it has to do with misplaced value, period. Like, we talked about this in a previous episode where we talked about patience and the steps that you need to take to get to a certain place, number one. And then also it has to do with where you want to be. So you look at like a LeBron James, for example, and nobody that I know personally wants to be running up and down the basketball court all day playing basketball. We love a little bit of popularity and a little bit of fame, but really, you think about the things that affords you. He has a nice homes, nice cars, and the money that goes along with that. But I think that in our community, there's a disconnect as to what it takes to like really get that on a sustained level. And so that's the reason that education is devalued, because we don't understand that education is one of those steps that's part of that plan that has to do with patience that it takes to get to where you want to be, And then it's not really all about multiple homes. It's not all about the cars and stuff like that, And that goes back to the value. Like Brother Ade was saying, what do you do for the community? And what can you do on a long-term basis? Not you come back to the community and buy turkeys, or you come back to the community and you buy some shoes for some kids, but what do you have in the community that's sustaining? And I think that even if you look from a business perspective, it takes some business knowledge, some patience, some foresight to say, okay, I'm going to open up a community center in the community and it's going to sustain itself, for 20 years. I can manage it or bring some people in to manage it, but I have the education and the discipline to do so. And I think that college is important for cultivating that discipline, in my opinion.
You
to misconceptions, and this kind of ties into misconceptions too. I think that it's important to say that I think that our people are practical people, and so when we make choices, a lot of times we're evaluating a whole bunch of different things. And so I once heard and saw some data on the fact that most black millionaires did not graduate from college. And when people see, I mean, you can see that in our communities, people who own businesses, they may not have gone to college, they may have started a business and they worked the business. That's not to devalue college, but it is to devalue the education process in this country. So, you know, I went to college, I went to some, you know, to supposedly a great college. I went to Emory and I went to Columbia, and they didn't teach me anything about how to run a business or how to, you know, I learned things while I was there in school. I learned things from, you know, the people that I was around. I grew up there. But in terms of class and actually learning something practical, it's not really, you know, you don't really learn those things. But if you go to a trade school, you're learning things that are practical. You learn to go to school to be an electrician, if you go to school to be a, you know, so we see those things. And so we're practical people. So we say, why pay somebody, you know, like you said, $20,000 a year to go to this school when I'm going to come out, and I see people who've gone to those schools and they can't get a job. Versus this guy who's fixing my car, you know, who's making you know, a decent living, and, you know, maybe he didn't go to college. So, I mean, I think that we're practical too. And so that's, I think one of the misconceptions that a lot of us have had, and becomes very disconcerting, is that when we go to school, automatically when we graduate, somebody's going to hand us a job.
Right.
And that's just not the case. You ain't getting handed, you know, when I graduated from school, you know, I said something, and a lot of people kind of got down when I said it. I said, when you're on this side of the stage, you're a student. When you get your diploma, you're unemployed. And so, it's the truth. I mean, if you don't have something lined up, you just unemployed with the debt.
He can help me be